Welcome to the Rally Points podcast for the love and fun of tennis.
We are joined this week by physical therapist Andy McLlarky. Andy's going to go over the prevention and rehabbing of various tennis injuries, strengthening, stretching, and provide useful tools for maintaining a healthy body.
The way that you guys do for as long.
So when I went to know, he's so into it right now. He gets the endorphins now that he doesn't want to risk the cold showers. It gives it just as that. It's just
I don't know. I feel like my shower doesn't get.
That's it. Yeah.
That cold.
Yeah. Mine is freaking ice.
Yeah.
It comes from the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Mine doesn't seem to get that cold.
Well, it tends to be like your face and your hands and your back, but not like all of you. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
immersed in it. You know what I mean?
I think that can almost be harder sometimes.
That is harder.
You're like, you get in the water and there's
the body goes in and out.
Yeah. All of a sudden, after 30 seconds, you can handle it.
You good?
All
right. And just bring that one a little bit closer. You don't need to do it
Sure.
too much, but you can. Yeah, that's kind of like where we do what you want. It picks up a lot, but
Okay.
we're good. We're recording on both. All right, look at that. All right, Andy, finally we got you here, man. Thanks for coming.
Oh,
Appreciate
thanks for
it.
having
Yeah,
me.
it took us a bit.
Yeah.
I do want to know that you were the first one here.
That's right.
Thanks everybody who was here on time. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was fun. I was setting stuff up, and I thought it was you coming up. And Andy's like had his stuff ready when we were starting. Like I thought it was an hour later.
At 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Just give me a half hour.
I know. Yeah.
Please go away.
Well, good thing. Yesterday I set up the room. That helps.
Yeah.
If you set up early. So, man. So thanks for coming. We appreciate it. It's gonna be a fun. I'm looking forward to this one. It's a lot of info that hopefully we're gonna get out of this. And first, let's start with you a little bit. You're the owner of Soul PT, right?
Yep.
And you're the hands-on guy, a guy that's like there every day.
Yep.
And one of the good ones, man. That's amazing because a lot of us have been to you. You helped us. You helped many of our members. So thank you for that. You always try to figure out what the issue, the source of the issue is, and that's something cool because you don't see that often. You see people following a certain procedure, but you try to get to the core of it. So that's nice. So thank you for that.
Yeah, people speak really highly.
Yeah, all the
Hear
time.
people with
Lies.
different injuries.
All lies.
They talk about different places they've gone and stuff, but when everyone mentions your place, it's really.
And you get some water, man. If you have water and whatever you need, that's actually
That's $2.50. That's $3.
Do you guys take Venmo, or how do I have to pay on the way out here?
Yeah. So Eddie, let's start a little bit like how did you get into it? Like
I got into physical therapy after a sports injury, which makes sense for a lot of PTs. I got a knee injury playing baseball in high school.
Oh wow.
And it wasn't a major injury, but I had to go to PT for it, and fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Really liked helping people. It worked for me. I think that helps. If
There
it
you
didn't
go,
work,
yeah.
that would be a problem, right? So, but that's kind of how I got into it. My mom was smart enough to say, hey, you should do an internship after and really make sure this is what you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I did an internship, loved it, and then went on to PT school. I went to Springfield College.
You grew up around here?
I grew up in Connecticut, which I know.
Oh, where?
East Lyme, Connecticut.
Lyme on the shore.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that you were a Connecticut guy on the website there. So there you go. And then that's not too far from where Springfield College is.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
And Springfield College is like a spirit, mind, and body thing, which I kind of took to heart too, and trying to take like a more holistic approach to like what we do, and trying to take like a bigger picture of the person than just like, oh, they have elbow pain or they have this. It's like taking in these other factors that are part of what's going on with them.
Isn't that so important these days to really look at the bigger picture and not just what the cause is? Sorry, not know what the issue is. Look at the cause and see what could create that. And because that's, I don't know. Do you feel like we're, as a society, we becoming a little bit weaker? Do you feel like I get see more injuries? I mean, you must. What's your wait time, man? Like you must be.
We do have a longest wait time. Yeah, but yeah, I do agree that just having a more resilient body, right?
Yep.
And you guys were talking about this with cold exposure, having like a hardened mind, but also building resiliency in your joints and your muscles and in other areas. And I do think that plays a role. There's also an earlier specialization with sports, right? So when I grew up, I played multiple sports, and I played like a different sport each kind of season.
Yep.
Up until a later age, and then kids tend to specialize. But I think that specialization happens earlier on, and I think that leads to other injuries, other problems.
That's so interesting. So we talked about this multiple times, about the need of variety in the kid development, because you get certain motricity, certain strengths from different sports, and explosiveness from one, strength from the other, reactive on the other one. You need all of that to develop a overall human. And you're right. Some kids, you start seeing them now. I heard one of my wife's friends, they want their 5-year-old to become a pro hockey player, and just that's what he does 5 days a week. I'm like, man, that's look, that's great, but I'm not sure if that makes you a complete athlete, a human. So
yeah, I think you should develop an athlete first and move in different ways. Be a good teammate. That's another thing. Having different voices in your life. So having a different coach. So like
there you go.
Guys are
that's a very good point.
All coaches here, but having different voices. I'm sure you guys learn from other coaches along the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important.
Yeah, you look back the ones you didn't listen, like, man, I should have listened to that guy.
Right.
He was right.
And then you find yourself saying the same things that they said.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys do that. I know you're a parent. And you're a parent as well, right? So all you guys. So then the day you find yourself saying the same exact thing your dad said, you're like, oh, there it is.
There it comes.
Like I have a new appreciation for it. So.
Yeah. You have 2, right, Annie?
I have 2 kids.
How old are they now?
I have a 10-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter.
Nice. Nice age, huh?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Larry's in that stage with his. Kev is ahead of us. I'm behind you guys for a few years, but
you will get there.
Yeah, of course, right? So going back to it, I do think that the society is getting a little bit weaker. Things are getting a little bit easier, and you must see it there like a bunch. Here's another thing that I'm interested from your world. Is the age? Do you see more kids than you saw 10 years ago? Do you see young adults that should not have that many problems?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point, and I think it's for the same reasons we were kind of bringing up. I think it's early specialization. Mm-hmm. I think kids, are doing more. They're getting pushed harder by parents. You were talking about one group that are like, oh, we're going to do hockey year round, and they push them really hard in that one sport. And then the demands of that sport dictate some of the injuries that they kind of face instead of being more well-rounded. I totally believe that's a thing. So.
I wonder, could it be from the other end too? Kids not being generally as active, and then they go out and their parents like, you are on your phone way too much. You're playing soccer this season, or you're doing something, and they go out and their body is not prepared because they haven't been doing anything, and then they injure themselves that way. Yeah.
So the thought process is doing too much after doing too little, right? So they're not prepared, right? So like video games, like iPads, things like this that they're on all the time, and they're not, if I wasn't playing a sport, I was playing pickup sports with my friends in the neighborhood, and we would get called back by my dad. Oh, it's time for dinner and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we were all moving a whole lot more.
A lot more, yeah.
So the actual condition of the kid isn't
just
as good.
Better, right? Yeah.
They're not in as good physical condition.
Right.
Yeah. I do. Yeah. Going back to it, it's the standards are dropped a little bit. On the physical standards are dropped a little bit, quite a lot actually lately. Yeah. And I think it's up to us to just, as much as you can, start bringing it back up. And you do have, not the best nutrition necessarily, which I'm sure in your whole holistic approach does influence a recovery, does influence an injury and the strength of your body and muscles and everything else. But yeah, in the, like I said, lower amount of exercise, that is a big cause of injuries. We have on one end over usage and then under usage on the other end, and that makes it
that was great
makes you busy.
Kevin.
Yeah. keeps you busy there. What would you say is like what's some common injuries that you see these days? Do we see a lot of lower back? Do we see a lot of neck injuries? Like from the driving, from the computer, do you see a lot of that? Or no?
Yeah, so overall, we see a lot of neck and back injuries. Those are the two highest things that physical therapy kind of treats is neck and back stuff.
Yeah, right.
I think there's been an increase in neck stuff because I think people are under a lot more stress. I think COVID kind of brought out different kind of stressors in people. They're set up. A lot of people are now working from home. Their setup at home in general is not as good as it could be. I think stress is a big driver of a lot of the stuff we see neck and back wise. Headaches are another thing that's like a thing because I think a lot of people have like jaw stuff. They like clench their jaw.
Yeah, at night too, right?
Yeah. And then the sports related stuff that we're going to get into a lot more. But yeah, neck and back stuff is like really common. And then what you were talking about from like the back standpoint is just not being in overall good physical condition. Right. So I think like the overall, baseline health of people isn't where it should be. And then they have some of these issues.
With the adults that you see, Andy, is it sport related? Is it work related? Like people working at home? Do you see a difference? Because of people working at home, they don't get out.
Yeah, so a wide variety of stuff that we see. We see people, just general people. We see sports injuries. We see weekend warriors that are playing tennis with you guys. We see, a wide variety of things. But yeah, totally. Activity level plays a role. Nutrition level plays a role.
Massive, right?
You guys talked about the cold exposure, but like getting out and moving. You guys were talking about getting out even for early morning walks. Sleep has become a big thing that we kind of take a look at as far as pain levels.
Everything, right?
The more likely people are going to have a chronic problem is also related to how much sleep they get, especially at low back pain, neck pain.
So you're talking when people come to see you, you're getting into that stuff.
100%.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we'll do like a thorough eval. We'll
at first are they like, what do you even?
Yeah,
why are you being so nosy?
So some people are taken aback, but I think like we've been doing it for a while that people now expect that like it's holistic. And they're not getting that from like their medical doctor.
Of course.
And that's not necessarily like the doctor's fault. It's like the system.
The system,
like so they're like you're in the doctor for 5-10 minutes. You'll have your chief complaint. They'll cut you off,
right,
and kind of get you back on track to your
let's
problem.
Keep this thing moving.
And that's not every doctor. There's a lot of really good doctors out there, but
general is that. You guys were just talking about like how many people are in the waiting room. But they do the best they can, but they have to like go quick. Okay, let me see what can I do. What can I prescribe?
What's the main problem here? And then I got to fix that, move on, and other stuff we'll worry about some other time.
Dude, my last physical was a joke.
Oh yeah,
it's always been a joke, but like I go in there, it's
in
like
and out.
10 minutes. All good. Labs are good. Why? Why am I like? I need to. Let's get into a little bit more. Like it's unfortunate. Yeah, so I'm glad you're looking at all those things. The way we talked about it before, and you probably have this a little bit more into detail, but always I look at it as 6 pillars of health, and 3 of them have a lot to do with the intake of food, which is massive, hydration. Because that one has a lot to do with injuries, right? Pulling muscles, so forth.
Absolutely.
Air, how people are breathing, right? Especially at night. That's massive. Then you have your movement, right? How active you are and everything else that goes with. You do have your mindset, and then you do have like your sleep. So those 6, you have to start there.
Yeah, so then when you talked about the cold exposure, some of that's helpful for your immune system. When we came in, you guys were crushing your vitamin C drinks, which is helpful. But then like the cold exposure is helpful for that. But like building some mental toughness, right? Yeah. So pain is a little bit a part of life. So part of we kind of get into like people playing tennis and people are going to have stuff, and that's okay.
Yep.
That's going to happen, right? So having some mental fortitude to work through some things is good. Like pain is not, nobody's going to go through life pain-free, and your ability to handle some things is a good thing. Yeah. And I think some of that should also be put out there more in society. I don't know.
Big time. I think you're so right there. It's just things are becoming a little bit too easy. Things are becoming a little bit too soft. And dude, you feel good when you were saying, you feel good when it's a mental battle, when you jump in that ice cold water.
Yeah.
and you come home like, man, that's a victory because
it's your first one of the
it's
day.
Your first
it
one of the day
right off the bat.
Yeah,
you know,
it's very important because that's the only way. Like, look at the kids; they fall, they get up, they hit a wall, they learn to walk straight. All that stuff, like that's how we get stronger. You learn from it. You need a little pressure. You need a little stress. Always do.
Do you find when you are talking to people about sleep that most people aren't getting enough?
Yeah, both quantity
Even
and
when they think they
and
are.
quality. Yeah, so then it's like looking at their sleep routine. Like, are you going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time? Are you getting early morning light exposure is a big one. So oftentimes we're getting into our day like right away, not getting outside, not getting your sleep gets kind of regulated by seeing the sun low in the sky. And the hormones that are released to tell you to go to sleep and stay asleep happen in the morning. So getting that early morning light exposure, kind of taking it easy with the screens right before bed, because it's the same thing. Your brain is thinking this is daylight kind of coming into your eye.
Right.
And that's causing kind of sleep disturbances. Well, a lot of folks.
Changes the melatonin release. It releases the cortisol, right?
That can be a hard habit.
Yeah.
I've recently just tried to get on mine a little bit better, but it's hard to change your sleep pattern, especially when you've been doing it for a long. It's okay. I'll just try to go to bed earlier and wake up early, but it
takes a bit.
Your body has to kind of work itself through that. It takes a little bit of discipline to make that change.
Yeah, and some people have like a natural clock that they want to go to bed at. Like, I'm a 10 to 6 guy. I want to go to bed at 10, and my body wants to be up around 6, and that's 8 hours, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
But some people fall asleep at 8, and some people like are midnight or later, but they have their day should be kind of regulated to that. Some people have different strengths.
The daylight, yeah.
And in your opinion, should you sort of listen to your body? Like, there's times where I'm falling asleep and it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
But I usually go to bed at 9:30. Should you listen and say it's time to go to bed, or fight it to get in my routine?
Yeah, I would listen to it. It's your body telling you, hey, like maybe you're it's cold and flu season. Maybe you're fighting something off. Maybe you had a harder workout that day. Maybe you didn't sleep as well the night before that you thought you did. So I would listen to it and then try to right yourself after that. It's okay. Like 1 or 2, nights like that aren't going to kind of screw you up. It's going to be like more of an extended kind of thing. Yeah.
Man, Maliko might be reading stories by herself then.
Yeah.
Falling asleep on my daughter. I'm like,
it is. Yeah. Man. Sleep is the biggest drug that we can.
Reading is tough too, and I've had to switch more to like those audiobooks because like I love to have a growth mindset, always like trying to learn.
Yeah.
But sometimes for me, like reading is like
instantly
makes me want to go to sleep.
Oh yeah. Especially if I have like a red light there too. That's what I have. At 8 o'clock I use a red light to sleep to read. You go down so quick.
Night.
Night. Yeah, I mean it's one of the most overlooked. Like that, I'll sleep when I'm dead. That's the worst saying that ever was.
Right. You're not going to be physically sharp. You're not going to be mentally sharp.
We all know how we feel when we don't sleep.
Right.
Yeah, but you can. That's what I was saying. We were talking over the summer when my sleep patterns were a little bit worse. You don't necessarily know that you feel that bad. You think that's the way you feel. Like
Right.
I thought I was functioning. I thought my body was feeling okay, and I didn't really notice it until I started getting more sleep for a certain amount of time. Then all of a sudden I'm like, damn, I feel way better. You don't necessarily. It's sneaky like that because you've been doing it for a certain amount of years. You think, okay, this is even at your best. You're like, oh, this is me feeling my best. Until all of a sudden you feel way better, and you're like, wait a minute, I was maybe at 70%, 60%.
Your baseline drops every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. We all have kids, so sometimes you're thrown off, and then a kid's in your bed or this or that happens. But it's just like trying to get back in a good routine after things get knocked out.
What I learned with sleep, especially with young kids and so forth, I learned through mistakes and through errors, through trial and errors, on days that I don't have enough sleep, not to do any high intensity mental tasks. I'll go over repetitive tasks, the ones that they're kind of automatic, because it's just I just don't have neurons. They're not firing right.
Yeah.
So you can solve a problem like that when you sleep. Even finding like somebody's stroke problem, whatever it is, even like in our business, or if you don't. Like, man, I'm just not sharp today, and that's okay to understand that, but see how you adjust your day per that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go and solve the world problems on 3 hours of sleep.
Somebody's gonna ask for 50% off one day. When Rars comes in,
But like this one's on me. Like listen, this dude on fire too good. Before we get some of those injuries, here's another question for you, and this could be a loaded one, because we do have a case, one of our very good friends. Are people jumping to surgery too quick?
Yeah. In general. There are surgeries that need to happen.
Of course.
100%. And there are ones that are time sensitive. And there are ones that you clearly, you want to do your research. You want to kind of work through a little bit.
Because how many people you must have helped before they thought they need to have surgery. And then through your program, through doing the right thing, over time,
a lot.
All of a sudden, right? You don't have to go under the knife.
And then your body's pretty resilient. So even though you'll look on some imaging like an MRI, right? And they'll say like, all right, you have a meniscus tear. Those things are very, very common, and they're treated well conservatively. But sometimes a meniscus tear doesn't work with conservative care, and you have to have surgery if it's catching and locking.
Yep.
And then same thing with spinal stuff, like herniated discs are like a really, really common problem, right? So, but they look at that and they heal. But it's also your ability to handle pain, right? So some of these injuries are painful, and everybody has a different tolerance to that. But oftentimes your body's super resilient. It heals, and then you can kind of rehab them out. But yeah, like I said, there is a time and a place for surgery.
Of course, of course.
But I think a lot of things could, you can avoid.
Avoided.
Yeah.
People looking for the quick fix.
Yeah.
At times, which is not a bad thing if it's there, but going into that, I mean, I know you.
I'm not even sure it's even the quick fix. It's the idea that like, you don't really have to. I mean, I guess you end up doing maybe a little PT after surgery and some, but like that, if you're electing not to have surgery and you're doing some PT, a lot of it is on like outside of PT to be doing
on your
maybe
own.
Certain exercises, this and that, and like I don't know. I think people sometimes like I can't. Dude, let's let this guy cut me open and fix it for me. But it just. I
mean, there's a market for all that stuff.
Oh,
same,
of course.
Same with like fat loss. Like people, it's hard to eat right. It's hard to exercise. Maybe I'll have this plastic surgery, or I'll have this medication that'll kind of take care of it.
Take the pills.
Versus,
Take
versus
the pill
then,
thinking.
Right.
Yeah. And
What's the quick, easy?
Yeah.
Like, what's that? Ozempic now. There's a massive. You see everybody done, but it's just, it's so much more. You have to look into it, right? It's like, because that cuts into your, it's more. It cuts into a little bit. You lose some fat, but also you lose some muscle. So you got to get some peptides with that too, to make sure that you don't lose enough muscle. So it's like a lot more behind it.
Right.
Yeah. That's a big one with surgeries, because I think we see it a lot. That becomes now an absolute, we should do that. I don't know, because you can fix a lot.
Yeah.
You can fix a meniscus, like you said, with I know I did that a few years ago. I just popped it and I decided I'm not gonna do it. 3 months, just hard work and all that stuff, and it's back to normal. It's
but haven't we spoken about this? Whenever you know the body really, really well, that's what you studied. It's a fine-tuned machine. When you open something up,
right,
you could mess something up.
Right, there's always
That's how we were created.
There's no going
back.
back.
There's not a wrench. You just tighten a bolt.
Yeah,
things like that.
There's no going back. Once you start kind of messing around with things, it impacts other things, right?
Correct.
And there are times that you have to. I'm not saying that that's definitely a thing, but
of course,
especially like spinal surgery, like as soon as you kind of start going in there, it's hard to kind of get out of that. And there's no guarantee that it's going to be 100% effective, and oftentimes you still have to do some work after. So, and that's something that they don't bring up.
That's the thing. Like, what's your like post-surgery rehab? Because you've got to deal a lot with that.
Oh,
so that the work has got to be so like precise and so hard to really get your body back to.
Yeah, some of these major injuries, like if you have an ACL reconstruction or if you have like a rotator cuff repair, like you're probably not the same athlete for 9 months to a year, and people think it's gonna be like,
boom.
A month or two, or like I'm gonna be fine. No,
or maybe not ever again.
Maybe
right?
maybe not at all.
If you weren't maybe in that great a shape going in, that maybe you never quite get it.
That is a great point. Maybe not at all is 100% a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. Do you have to deal with the pressure of expectations, like of what's the recovery time? Because people get this range. Oh, I should be. We see it a lot. Oh, I'm gonna be back in 3 months, but that varies so much per age, per body type, per your fitness level, right? All of that stuff, and everyone's different. You must be seeing that.
We have to do a lot of that. So oftentimes when people have to have surgery, they're told one thing and it may not line up.
Well, that's the selling point.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't line up, and everybody wants to get back to their sport. And you guys see this a ton, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like people tennis players want to play tennis, right?
Yes.
So they want to be back there yesterday. But then, and we want them to get back there, but we also want to make sure they get back there safely and they don't rush to failure.
Yeah.
So we try to objectify things as much as possible, because then it will be less in my hands, less in their hands.
Yep.
All right, you got a checklist. All right, you can do A, B, and C. We're ready to go. Or, you can't do D yet. We got to wait a couple more weeks.
Right.
So that way it's like not me being mean or them,
No, but
we're setting them up for success instead of like, you're going to immediately be hurt going back out there, be super frustrated because your shoulder still hurts when you go back to serve.
Yeah.
So
Isn't that sort of funny? Like sometimes I look at things from the opposite side where people might be saying, "Oh, this guy just wants me to keep coming in.
Right.
I'm ready to go."
Yeah.
Right.
But he's telling me I'm not ready. I know my body, but he wants to see me 3 more times. You know, thinking from the bad end.
Yeah.
Where they're
So
thinking,
I own a business, and I totally understand that side of things. It's good. But then you can say like it can be used as a motivator. Say like, hey man, like you haven't been like super diligent with your stuff, but you got to do A, B, C, and D. Like I don't know if Raris comes in and he needs to I'm like, you're gonna do the work. I just need to outline the plan.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then there's people that you need to like kick in the butt.
Yep.
Right.
Just like you guys will see as coaches too. You're like, I want you to work on this. You come back, the same thing. You're like, clearly you didn't work on this. So let's,
You're right. It does. You work on a serve with somebody. You're like, now it's your time to put the work in. We did our work on our end. Now you need your 500 reps.
And that's a spectrum. I'm sure you'll see people that will do. You tell them 500, they do 1,200.
Yes.
And then you
exactly.
have people that did 2. And then you're like, okay, like clearly I can see the difference. Yeah.
There is a rush to, and you get it because people, even tennis, it's a big part of their life. Social, they get exercise, it's built into their life schedule. And you'll hear them with these injuries, and they'll shoot off this email, and they'll be like, yeah, I should be back in this time. And we're reading this email, and we're like, And even, I've had the experience of people coming back, and then you're kind of warming up, and you're trying to take it slow, and you're like, and your PT is cleared this for you to hit, and they're like, well, and you get these answers, and you're like, wait a minute.
Correct.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Follow there. You do have to follow orders, and your PT has probably given you orders for you, not just not what the doctor first said. Well, we do this, we cut into you real quick, and you're going to be skipping out of here in a month time, which is maybe right for some people, but now the plan has been modified for you exactly. Now just follow that. But it seems to be a really hard thing to get people to do, which has got to be fairly frustrating on your end of it.
No, that's 100% true, and we try really hard to not follow like one set protocol. Because everybody's coming in from a different starting point, right? So, and they have a different work ethic, and they have a different
body type,
all the things, right?
Man,
so some people it's going to take a lot longer, and some people are going to be ready in half the time, and you have to make sure that you're kicking these guys in the butt to kind of get them going, and you're kind of pulling the reins back on some of these other people that may think they're ready, but they're not ready, right?
But Kev, I think you bring a good point. I think what comes with coming back to, in our world, tennis is a big draw for them. The social aspect for it, the release, the getting out of your life routine and do something different. I think that's what people are
Rushing
missing as
back
well.
to,
They're
yeah.
rushing back to as well. Not necessarily. I mean, the playing too, but that's the other part is big. That's a big point. We become almost an extension of what you guys are doing. In a perfect world, everybody has an injury, right? It would be like, I would like to communicate a little bit if I coach somebody with a PT. I'm like, okay, what do you think? What can we do? And what's the motion? Can I stress this? Like, what 50% here, like 80% there, because that's how you build somebody back up. And we careful as much as we can, but at times we get bad information. People are like, I'm ready to jump in.
Yeah.
Then they're not.
Right.
You guys also know the person very well too, because you develop a relationship, which is why you guys kind of do what you do. You get to be one-on-one with the person. You get to understand what drives them, what motivates them, how are, what's the best way to kind of work with them. That's like really helpful for us to know, because half the people you need to kick them in the butt to kind of get going, and half the people you have to kind of rein them in, and so you guys know their personality, what's going to work, like just like being any kind of coach. And that's a big deal. And I almost said this earlier, but I'm thankful, we can be, the second biggest story in sports today on this podcast with Bill Belichick kind of coming out. But I think people you talked about being softer or having to understand that emotional intelligence on having to deal with people. I think we have to be a little bit more understanding and a little less sometimes a little less direct.
Cut and dry. That's.
I do wonder too that earlier you were saying kind of like some people can deal with pain a little bit more, which is important. I also think, at least, and I know we see it a little bit here, I think some people can maybe be a little careless and just assume that something is going to go away, and it's not. Especially elbow, probably a tennis elbow is kind of a big one around here, and you'll see people and they're like, ooh, it's gotten really bad lately. And then I'll see them twice later that day playing, and then the next day and this and that. And there's really no sense. And maybe they're even doing something, they're icing and they're doing this other stuff, but they're also, there is a point. Where do you think rest now just becomes like, where does that, before you even maybe do anything else, just like, how about resting for a little bit and seeing what that does to your body?
Volume of training is huge, right? So it's managing, the overall stress on the system, right? So it's making sure, we talked about the rest, the recovery, the sleep, that being huge. And sometimes you just need a little bit of time for your body to do its thing and heal up.
Just heal.
Yeah. So that is very appropriate as a first frontline strategy. Some of that's an education piece, like we need to do better, and some of it's like on you guys, and then some of it's like you got some hard-nosed people that I think don't want to hear that.
They wear it as a I think some people wear it as a badge of honor. Like I'm going to play through this. I'm going to play through this, but
it's not helping.
No.
Yeah. It's not helping.
Not only for if your tennis, your actually ability to play out there is now diminished, but you're maybe now making this problem stick around
a lot
longer than it actually needs to be.
Totally agree.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to get people to, or they rest like, oh, I didn't play this weekend. You're like, well, maybe 2 days
wasn't
in the grand scheme wasn't enough. Maybe you need 2 weeks to like let something happen, but just people don't seem to want to do that, or maybe they don't know.
Well, we all love the sport. That's
it is, but
it's.
I feel like maybe sometimes rest can
sometimes 2 weeks off like prevents you from hurting for a year or for 6 months, and you're like, if I just give this a little bit of time, it's going to get significantly better, and I can kind of do that. And you can take that time to do other helpful things, because you can always train around an injury, or you guys can give them other homework that they need to work on footwork, or they need to work on other things that are still driven towards their goal of being a better tennis player, while you take away, the amount of gripping that they're doing.
Yeah. So on the sticking a little bit with this rehab thing, do you? Because I find at a time seeing people, and I'm sure that's one of the parts you work on. Let's say somebody's coming off an injury, right, or surgery, whatever it is. Possibly that part that got injured was a little weaker than it should be in the first place. So now, post your injury, post your recovery, do you work with them in changing like the strength or flexibility of that particular part? Because now he's like, look, you're playing tennis now. You haven't played tennis 4 years ago. That was not an issue. Now you're playing tennis 4 times a week.
Yeah.
We need to get your shoulders a little bit stronger. We need to get your biceps or triceps a little bit stronger, like that. Your back, everything else, right? So that's a big part of also, because you can fix an injury, but now what got you there in the first place needs to be.
It's build a resilient system, right?
Yeah.
Build a resilient body. So we like to say load the tissue with the issue. So like you were talking about, like so it's sticky to people. People, it'll linger, right? So like outside elbow pain, really, really common. You want to load the structures that impact that, which are like your wrist extensors and your supinators. But we're also going to build up their shoulder complex. We're going to build up their legs. There's good studies to say like leg strength is highly related to lateral elbow pain too, like outside elbow pain. So you're going to treat the issue, the problem, but then you're going to try to figure out why is that happening. And some of that is a body thing, and then some of that's like working with you guys, because you guys are taking a look at their tennis swing, and there's
biomechanics,
100%.
Everything.
So there's a lot of things that you guys play a big role in that too.
So let's go straight into this. Like in the tennis injury, obviously, the number one will be the tennis elbow and golfer's elbow, right?
Yep.
Which come from different parts of the strokes of the body. So you're saying the full on, even looking at your leg strength is a big part of that.
Yeah, looking at their leg strength. There's common things that happen in tennis. So you tend to be stronger in your internal rotators, so like the muscles that are bringing you in on your service, like your forehand, and less strong in like your upper back muscles around your rotator cuff, the muscles around your scapula or shoulder blade. So we're testing all that out. We're taking a look at those things. For you guys, it's like the racket, taking a look at how it's strung, how tight, because sometimes if things are too tight, that force isn't absorbed as well, and it's going to impact their elbow.
Right.
So there's things like that you got, and we'll have people bring in the racket, and we can kind of take a look at it. But how it's strung makes a big difference too. They look at the loads, and it's been well documented, both for tennis and golfer's elbow. So tennis elbow is kind of misnamed because it's just as likely, if not more likely, that you're going to have inside elbow pain that you are going to have outside elbow pain.
Yes.
Even though outside elbow pain is called tennis elbow.
Yeah.
And the other one's called golfer's elbow.
But they're the same.
But they're very, very common problems. When we take a look at what happens with like medial elbow pain, so when you guys go, it's kind of a tight area, but when you kind of come into like putting spin on the ball on like a forehand, this kind of motion lends it more to like
getting over the ball.
Yeah, getting over the ball, like having more issues on the inside part of your elbow.
Yeah.
And then the opposite is kind of true the other way. The other thing that happens at the elbow, we call it like a valgus extension overload. So when you go on a swing, you're trying to hit it as hard as you can. And the back part of your elbow can have issues too, like with a triceps kind of tendonitis, trying to slow things down.
Yeah.
So it's taking a look at the other. Yeah, we're going to treat their elbow,
Of course.
but we're going to take a look at their shoulder, their leg strength, their upper back. When they're going to serve, are their hips able to extend? Is their back able to extend? Are they getting everything through their shoulder? Like, it's trying to take a look at the whole body.
mechanic.
Yeah. But you guys play a huge role, because like we'll take a quick look in the clinic, but you guys work with them all the time.
And
you guys know their faults. You guys know what's going on there.
Right.
So.
Can I ask you something on that?
Yeah.
We're talking about biomechanics. That's a ton of stuff that we work on.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people in the industry don't even sort of think about that when teaching tennis. In any other sport, but specifically tennis, how is your knowledge, or how do you treat your staff and tell your staff to learn the tennis game, learn how a pitcher throws, because then you guys can diagnose and help the rehab? Because I talk to a lot of people, oh, you're going to PT. Well, do they know the sport that you play? Do they know what it takes to get back? Because I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, you need to understand the demands of the sport, and then you need to take a look at what they're doing. If they're having shoulder pain, or they're having back pain with their serve, right? So you want to actually watch them serve to see like what's kind of going on there. A certain amount of movement is necessary, and then you want to make sure they're getting it from the right spots, right? So if you have some tightness in the front part of your hips, if your shoulder can't go all the way up and you need to get all the way up overhead, you're going to arch your back to kind of get there. So we're trying to take a look at the component pieces and make sure that you have adequate kind of range of motion, adequate kind of strength in the areas that you kind of need to have. But it needs to look at the demands of whatever they're going to do, whether it's tennis, whether they're a pitcher in baseball, whether they're a weightlifter, whether like whatever. You have to a runner. You have to watch them run if they're a runner. If they're having pain serving, you have to watch them serve, or else you're missing the boat. And you just I'm just going to calm down their elbow.
You're treating a symptom.
Nothing changed when they went back to their sport. So, and that's why I like having good communication with you guys, because you guys know way more. Your whole lives were tennis, like, so you guys know way more about tennis than I'll ever know. I know enough.
Oh, you know a lot.
Yeah, I know.
I was impressed with the way you just turned the ball over.
Yeah, you know more than you think. I think you do.
But like communicating with you guys is huge.
I think that's big.
You guys are gonna know. You're gonna know the stuff. Yeah,
that's huge.
It is. I mean, we're connected. It is, the way the body works. I'll commit. But it's amazing to hear, like, when you're thinking about elbow pain, that you're thinking about the legs.
Yeah.
It just seems like upper body, lower body. You're like, what's
so somebody that has tennis elbow now, without elbow pain now, let's say they don't have time or they have to wait in line to come see you. What would you tell them? This is a general. I know everybody's different, right? What's a general approach to? Do you do some stretching? Do you do the usual like forearm stretching? Do you look a little bit at your shoulder mobility? What can people do on their own to, one, mitigate a little bit the pain if they have some, or two, just as important, prevent all of that?
Yeah. So I know that Mike has these kind of laying around here. It's called a flex bar. So you want to kind of load the tissue with the issue, warm that area up. When we look at lateral elbow pain, it's doing eccentric exercise. So like loading, improving the tensile strength of that tendon and muscle unit is really helpful. So for this, so if you're listening to this, it's kind of tough.
Okay.
But if you're watching, there's like a
I'll try to explain what you're doing.
We'll try to explain what's kind of going on. But trying to like load that area, so you have to kind of control, build some resiliency in the tissues that are most involved is going to be the most helpful thing that you can do. Yeah. And it's okay. We talked about that before, to have a little bit of discomfort in this area, especially if it's a persistent problem. So if you're doing something and it's like a 2 or a 3, it's slightly uncomfortable, working on getting that area stronger is really helpful and not hurtful when we look at tendon strength. So that's a big one for this outside elbow. Inside elbow would be like the opposite. And then also like using a hammer is a big one, or people have kettlebells. So like holding the end of the hammer because you want the load to be kind of further away.
Going on the outside.
And then
holding it, that's a very
and then going
inside
slowly in and out into supination and pronation. This hammer was actually from a Bass River guy, because we had one, but he wanted different gradations.
There you go.
So he I won't name his name because we're not supposed to do that. But we now have like 10 hammers from a Bass River guy. That's awesome.
But that makes that makes sense.
And what, you just crank those out like sets of
10, 12. So like building some resiliency there. Doing 3 sets of 10, 12 slowly. So when we take a look at tendon health, you want a slow and controlled contraction with like a moderate weight. You don't want to be going rapid fire. You want to kind of increase time under tension
time under load.
Under load. So to kind of build that actual tendon up. So that it can handle more stress, because we want them if we just rubbed their elbow, it felt better for a minute, but then they went back to whatever they were doing and not changing anything. Right. So we want to build that tendon up, and then we're going to work on the other problems, right? So we're going to evaluate. So maybe it's a leg thing. Maybe it's the shoulder's weak. Maybe their upper back is really stiff. Maybe it's a combination of these. So we try to tailor what we're going to do. But if you're asking for something that they can do that's going to be helpful without us looking at them, building up the strength around that area, with the hammer, with that flex bar.
So to get the strength going.
Which I know for Bass River people that they are around here, because I know Mike has, at least I know Mike has a couple of them.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if he makes it like readily available for you guys.
Yeah, no, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, you did a good job with Mike, by the way, on his arm. Like after his surgery a few years ago. Then he was using those like religiously. He still does. He still works
you
those
still
things.
See him,
Yeah.
Yeah,
we all make fun of him, but he
before he plays, he definitely does.
Oh,
You
he's
see him,
always-
he kind of warms up with it a little bit before he even hits the court.
Having your tissue be warm before you play is extremely
That's
helpful.
big. We're gonna
so globally warm, like
Yep.
moving, going back and forth on the court, but then locally warm. So if you have an elbow injury, loading up your elbow.
Yeah.
If you have a shoulder injury, doing some stuff for your shoulder.
yeah.
So global warmth and local warmth are really helpful,
gonna
and
get into-
that's a global
Yeah.
thing that anybody can kind of do.
But
take
that's
on.
good. That's good to know. And like what you just said, that's typically when someone does say they have a little bit of pain. That's the thing that I'm looking at. Okay, what's your flexibility there? Because sometimes we'll see this muscle being like your forearm muscle being so tense, or the shoulder, man, the pec minors and pec majors are just so tight.
Yeah.
And that will. I mean, is that something that you want to look at flexibility?
100%, because they're always going in,
Yep.
always going in, and never like going out. So
exactly.
you want to maintain the ability to go the other way. We don't want them to stop going in, because that's
Yep.
the demands of their sport. But we need to kind of build the opposing group, make sure that they can kind of open up.
Yeah, so full on having both.
So when we take a look at shoulder and elbow injuries, it's the same thing. Like they're going to be kind of rotated in from kind of coming in a lot. We're going to be working on them kind of opening up, whether it's their elbow. We're still going to be doing a lot of band work for their shoulder, kind of up here.
Yeah.
Making sure they have adequate extension through their mid back. Because if everybody thinks of like their grandmother, right? So it's like
Correct.
all kind of rounded in.
Correct.
And then you go to move your arm, it doesn't go very well, right? So it's like
Correct.
opening all this stuff up, frees up where you want them to be when they serve the ball, right? So getting them to extend through their mid back, getting them to kind of open up their chest.
Let's veer off real quick, then we'll come back to all those injuries because they're so important. What I just said there, and I had it written down there, I wanted to talk about the importance of posture,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
How big is that in your world, in our world too, to have the correct alignment and not have what he just said, your shoulders in, which tends to be so prevalent these days,
Yep.
right? Which now stresses the back muscles, the lower back specifically, shrinks your abs, shrinks your chest. So now you're disproportionate there, right?
Yeah.
So posture, like, it's got to be massively important.
Posture is massively important. We like to say your best position is your next position. So it's not like getting into, like, if I got here for a minute, it's not a big deal. But like if a lot of people that you work have desk jobs, right? So they're like on their laptop at home and not a great
So many
position.
people these days, yeah.
Right. So it's making sure they're adequately able to kind of open up and kind of get there. And if your resting position for your shoulder is here, like you're more apt to have shoulder stuff. You're more apt to have elbow stuff. Your neck gets kind of tight. Everybody gets kind of that tension in like the trap there or whatever. So your resting posture plays a big role, and making sure that you can do the other thing, right? Making sure that you can open up.
Because you think sometimes that you have lower back problems, but in reality, you have like a pull muscle problem because of your shoulders are too.
Right. And yeah, so that's posture, but then it's also for you guys, tennis is by nature asymmetrical. So you don't have two rackets, you have one racket.
Correct.
You only serve from one side. You don't switch and do half your serves from the other side, right? So you're going to create some asymmetries, and they're probably necessary for you to be an outstanding athlete. But when we take a look at that, how that translates to life, if you are only side bending one way all the time, you want to make sure that you can go the other way.
Yeah.
Right.
And that these muscular imbalances, these strength differences, don't impact you in life. So you need to have them, but you also need to make sure that you can counterbalance them.
Yeah, it's
Talk about that with like our arms.
Our
Sometimes
forearms,
our forearms and stuff. It's like it seems like it's on two different
two different people.
bodies.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah,
Absolutely
exactly.
wild. Yeah.
in early my 20s, I did have a bad tennis elbow, and it was by need, not because I wanted to. For a couple of months, I started doing a lot more things with the left side, and I realized how much important that is. And since then, there's so many tasks that I'm actually doing lefty just to keep working that left side. Because especially in our job, not even playing tennis, teaching tennis, there's so much with the right side. So there's so many things that I, over time, silly in the beginning, but it's way more natural now. It's do lefty.
Yeah.
Do that left side.
It's good for your body. It's also good for your brain. You have to kind of work through a different scenario. The first time you do that, you're
silly
probably,
at times.
You're probably
try to brush your teeth lefty. For me, it's like, hey, moving my head was in my head.
Right in the eye. Oh no!
You're like, this is super awkward, but it's good for you to work through that, like for your brain, and it's good for you to work that to keep your body healthy.
Back to the.
Before you go, can I ask a quick question? While we're talking about posture, do you have any? Because I'm trying to work on mine. Mine is terrible.
Yeah,
I actually realized it through watching some of these back. I'm like,
well, I'm
sitting
like,
there, and I'm like, what am I?
I have to work on it too.
Yeah.
And I fool around playing the drums a little bit, and I realize like I'm.
Oh,
here.
he had a. Oh yeah, let's get into that because I'm curious.
So I'm trying to remind myself to do it. I'm using my phone. Sometimes I set a reminder on my phone. I'll get a blast to do that. Do you have any tips as far as like what we can do to help us?
Well, we talk about drumming. One of my, I have a good friend who's a professional drummer, and he worked with somebody that just specifically does PT and kind of stuff for drummers. Like getting yourself significantly higher is super helpful because then you're just kind of coming down at things versus kind of having to lift up, and it leads to a lot of repetitive, because there's a lot of repetitive stress injuries in drummers too. And for all those reasons. What was the first part of that?
Just, I don't know, is there any like you have any tips as far as like
universal
what
stuff? Universal stuff. You guys should, everybody so I brought a band. I didn't realize outside, but like everybody should be doing like a band pull apart, right? So like things to like open up your chest and kind of open you up. Everybody's stiff through their upper thoracic spine. So like working on a common exercise is an open book, and I can kind of send you guys these things, but laying on your side, keeping your hips stacked, and then opening up your arm to try to open up your chest and your mid back is extremely helpful. So there's tons of moves that you guys can.
So that exercise that we're doing, that's for that.
Yeah.
Which one? So that's thoracic extension and your pec length.
And
that's
we're doing it in the 50, 75, and 100, just like pressure in, just about a minute and a half. So that's for that. That's for the posture.
That's great for you guys. And there's, when I came in, there was more women's tennis, but they need it most of all. So like when you're kind of taking a look around at like what's going on out there, like opening up their chest, like it is hugely helpful.
We were talking about this, and I'm sure this a while ago, about what I see and what I'm starting to look now lately from this perspective. Because in tennis you have to turn left and right and do certain things, and the neck flexibility, I see it reduce in many people because of the posture. Yeah. So I tell them like, well, turn sideways here, and their head cannot turn, so they can't see that ball. Yeah. So then what happens, instead of being fully correctly turned, you open up a little bit more because your neck only has that much extension. It doesn't have full
rotation
range. Yeah. So that impacts a little bit your shot, which now can lead at you're hitting the ball open, more pressure on your elbow, shoulder, all of that stuff. So that posture is so massively important.
So that's why we try to take a wider lens. So like even if you're coming in for your elbow, we're taking a look at your neck, your shoulder, your upper back, like all this. Do you have the adequate stuff? And even if you have the adequate stuff, are you using it when you go to do your thing? If you're going to go do, if you're having shoulder pain with a serve, right, we want to take a look at all the parts.
Yep.
And then take a look, what does it look like when you try to put it all together yourself? Yeah. Right? So
because everything, all the correct techniques in tennis, if you do the correct technique, it should be, the kinetic chain is there, should not, something is broken in that kinetic chain if you have an injury, most of the time, not always. You might be weak on a certain part. But on the shoulder injuries, on the serve, typically what we see is the dropping of the left side while the right side is down. So you have a hyperextension here in the shoulder. So now there's a lot of pressure on your hitting shoulder while your body falls off, but you haven't yet made contact with the ball. So now you have this pressure point here that could create so much That's what we see. I mean, that's your.
So that would come into the clinic with the front of their shoulder hurts.
Yep.
And it'd be like, all right, well, we got to take a look at your shoulder. And there are things that tend to come up where people have excessive external rotation and they lack internal rotation. There's things that kind of like come up, but we have to watch that and or get feedback from you guys to say like, hey, this is what we see when he or she is serving.
Yeah, the most common one is toss, drop, and then the hand is still up. So now you have this pressure in the front of your shoulder there. That's over time and over the years.
Swinging hard, like going after.
Swinging hard,
like
which
that,
can add pressure to your forearm. So that's.
How receptive are people to change in the absence of like pain? Like if you see something, do you have to like switch it and not make it about pain and be like, you're going to get more power on your serve or you're going to be more efficient?
They're very good about learning the right technique. They're very good about obviously not getting pain. So that's fine. Obviously you're going to see people, I don't want to change anything, which is fine. But most people, it's such a nice membership. Most people like, because you want to help. They come to you for help. So,
I was going to say, I think the sample of people we're seeing are there to make changes. And there's a huge percentage of this club that aren't involved in the educational half the lessons. They just come, they rent courts, they play, and you see them hitting some ways. And you're like, ooh boy, those people might not be maybe as open to it. But people that are coming in and taking lessons and that, they're usually there to keep developing their game, or you do get calls occasionally where people are like, look, I'm now having this problem. I know it's related to my lack of technique. I need to come in and. I think pain is a pretty powerful thing to get people to be like, I need to change this or stop playing. You know?
We tried to do that at a different scale lately for the past few years. We do those workshops, and they're so involved in technique to get every little aspect of it that you're probably not gonna be able to cover in a clinic with many people. This one, people will have them sit down, we show video, we break down the motion, and that seems to help a lot. With people changing within 2.5 hours a technique that they had for like 10 years or 15 years or more. So that in a way is one way of kind of mitigating any possible issues on a physical side. But it's such a complex sport, so many motions, and you have a racket in hand and the speed involved, obviously the ball coming to you, that there's a lot of injuries that if you're not paying attention can.
It's also what, if you're ever to just fool around on your own and play, what's comfortable and what might even work at first is not even close to what the actual technique should be sometimes. It's a hard sport to just kind of figure out on your own, all like the small little details of your elbow position or this or that. And it's, it's like you go out there and you figure out, I can now get a ball over the net. But you don't realize, like, you're getting the ball over the net, but you're slowly destroying a certain part of your body.
Oh, yeah. And you can see a big difference. So I walked in today. I had the wrong time, and I was here early.
We both did.
But then I, looked.
Ahead of everybody else.
I started on one half, right? And I took a look, and then I went to the other half. And this was, less than a minute of looking, and you could tell not only the level, but, who knew how to play, right?
Right, yeah.
Because you can... Yeah. When somebody's a beginner or novice, they move more awkwardly. They they're less consistent. You can tell.
Yeah. You can. Andy was like, "This is a higher level here." I'm like, "Oh yeah."
You can tell right away. Yeah.
You must be able to even see too, just people swinging and be like, "Oh boy, that's probably a future client."
On each court, there was a piece of adaptive equipment. So one person had a counterforce brace for the elbow. The middle one had a knee sleeve on. There was always something that, you can tell that there's
super common.
Yeah, you see it.
I mean, how many people are? I mean, tons of people are in the those little, the armband and stuff.
They call it a counterforce brace, and the thought behind it is this is the common attachment point for your extensors of your wrist, of your fingers, and of the muscles that flip your wrist, right? So you're changing the point of contact to 2 instead of 1, and sometimes that can allow that tendon to calm down a little bit. And sometimes the compression just feels good. It just kind of takes a little bit of pressure off of that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If it allows them to go play.
They have some you see with the little airbags, and then other ones that are just bands. Yeah. I think one of those are better.
It's really a personal preference, because some people are going to take more to just the general compression, and then some people like, I really need to take pressure off of that one spot, and having one other point of contact feels good, and other people feel better with more general kind of compression on that area.
So that's just more personal preference.
Yeah.
Ellis is laughing at me because I wear one.
Yeah.
I wear one when I teach.
I think it's hugely helpful.
Yeah.
And it allows you to play. It allows you to play with less pain, and you're doing a good thing. And there's not a right or wrong.
Yours has
answer.
the little. You wear.
I have the bubble.
little bubble, right?
It's a bubble. So like you said, a compression that really relieves sort of that tension on there.
And some people find that way more comfortable than or more beneficial to the one that's more general. And some people are like, I don't like that point pressure. I like the, more dispersed kind of.
What's
stuff.
the just because I do see a lot of people wearing them. Sometimes they're always asking, what's the general pressure on those things? Like, what's the tightness?
So
that
don't cut the blood flow.
Yeah.
It should be moderate.
Correct.
We'll come back to that
I think-
blood flow thing because that's really
I
important.
think maybe it wants to be a little tighter than people actually do. I mean,
people have different
sliding around.
people have different tolerances, but it's got to be tight enough to do something.
Stay anchored
and then
in
some
place.
people, and then it's interesting that you brought up the blood flow because when we take a look at these tendinopathies, we use what's called blood flow restriction training. And I don't know if any of you guys have heard of that or experienced that.
I've done it with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's using a blood pressure cuff to put the muscle under strain so that you can kind of load that area with less weight than you would have to. So to get appreciably stronger in an area, you have to be using like 60% or more of their one repetition maximum. And then oftentimes people are in too much pain or uncomfortable for you to like load that area up to the point where you're going to create the adaptations that you want to create. So you can use what's called blood flow restriction training to kind of load that muscle tendon unit up, release helpful properties like testosterone, growth factor, growth hormone, things that are helpful for healing that area.
That's massive.
Yeah, which is
massive,
helpful.
Yeah, it's a good one. What's we're going to go back to some injuries because obviously we wanted, but within that realm of new techniques and all that, because you do a lot of cool stuff there. That being one of them, and I really enjoyed that when I did it. You do. It's not acupuncture, right? But is it?
We do what's called dry needling.
Yes,
and if something's been going on for a while, it gets kind of stuck in this chronic, like inflamed state.
Yeah.
And you can kind of reset the system using an acupuncture needle, using dry needling. So you would go into the tendon and the muscle and actually inflict a little bit of damage to kind of reset the system to get that area to kind of calm down.
I was impressed with how quickly that shifted the tension and the pressure when I had my problem.
Oh,
there.
it's pretty instantaneous.
It's amazing how that.
Depending on the area. So like tendons, like you're going right into the tendon and it might be sore for a day or two after you're doing it, but it kind of kickstarts that inflammatory response to let your body heal because it's been stuck. Because you'll see people for a while that have an injury, like a couple months, maybe a year, like indefinite nag, like upper body stuff tends to be nagging for you, like lateral elbow pain, medial elbow pain, shoulder stuff.
Yeah.
So it kind of kickstarts that response back up to kind of have a strong reset of that area to allow it to kind of heal and do better.
Yeah, because you do all those new things. Anything else that's new? And we
do a lot of so we tend to do a fair amount of manual therapy, like using cupping, dry needling, massage, joint mobilization, kind of stuff like that. So like you guys, if we give you a strong like set of things to do, you guys can do them. And it's like, how do we deliver you value? It's like creating a change with our hands or educating, and kind of working with that.
I vividly remember when I went in there and we've done the flexibility test when I had my hip flexor and problem there, and it is amazing just by doing certain things. You don't realize how imbalanced you sometimes get. Still remember like my hips, how I couldn't turn one way or the other. A lot of things. And then through manipulation, you were working harder and that was coming back.
Yeah. So you have to like allow that range of motion to come back and then you work through it, right? you're an ideal patient. You're going to, you see, oh, I see how this is off. And then like, I'm going to work on doing it because I'm motivated to kind of do it. But tennis is naturally asymmetrical. The way you guys set up for your serve, the way, a lot of the things. So it's allowing you to move the other way. So you had asymmetrical hip rotation. So one way he could rotate his hip out really well, and be tight the other way, and then the other hip was the opposite. Right. So we can use like hands-on techniques to allow that to kind of move better and show you some ways that you can kind of work on that on your own. So that you can kind of continue to kind of stay healthy. Because
I had to take a lot of abuse from those guys when I was walking funny on the course. I was so imbalanced. Some days I was like, but it was in that stage, like newborn. I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't really, my body wasn't a priority at that point. And you let that go to the wayside. That's what happened. And I had to. That one took me a few months until I came to you, and I was like, all right, well, we got to fix this way.
Got to come up with a plan, and
your body takes such a and it's so important to take care of the system. If you're not taking care of your body, you're not going to do anything else at a high rate. Plus, again, those guys were way too mean, way too mean to me.
They're just trying to toughen you up. You're talking about everybody's too soft, but he can't take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think most people, no matter what you're doing, should prioritize a little bit of stretching, just like through your everyday life?
Yeah, so there's typical areas that tend to get kind of tight on people. People follow patterns. So like the mobility stuff, like in the upper quarter, so like in your neck and kind of your shoulder complex, people tend to lack being able to bring the arm back. They tend to lack shoulder internal rotation. You guys talked about kind of the shoulder kind of dipping and kind of rounding forward. So we want to like open that up. And in the lower body, people tend to be limited in their ankle range of motion and then their hip range of motion. And if you're talking about
that's so big.
If you're talking about tennis specifically, hip internal rotation range of motion like plays a big role because like you have to be able to kind of come through that front hip. So if you don't have adequate rotation there, you're going to have, some stuff pop up, and it's probably not in your hip. It's probably in your knee or your back. So it's kind of taking a look at some of these areas. Yeah.
Andy, going on that stretching, what's your take on post-stretching?
Yeah.
After playing?
Yep.
Because a lot of people don't.
Yeah, no. So that's where you can kind of create more adaptation. So if you're gonna stretch after, your body's already warmed up, which is great. And you want to do more of a prolonged kind of stretch in your areas. Your areas might be different than Rara's areas. That might be different from my areas or Kevin's. So it's trying to take a look at the areas that you need the most and utilize that time kind of after. I know everybody's brain switches, right, to like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm on to my list of life that has to kind of go on. But even if it's 5-10 minutes, that's going to make a big difference in what you can do, and it's a great time because your body's warm.
Correct.
So that's a good time. And then before we talked about globally warming up, getting your heart going, getting a little bit of a sweat, and then if you have an area like for you mentioned your elbow, it'd be like doing a couple things to make sure the tissues in your elbow are ready to go. So it's like a global and then a local kind of warm up.
I like that concept, global and local. A little bit on staying on stretching. That's one of my points that I wanted to get after, and it's I think will be helpful for everybody listening to know there are different types of stretching, right? There's your static stretching, there's dynamic, there's the percussion one, and this one I want to kind of dip into because you must see it, you use it a lot, I'm sure, but it's specific. You got to be careful for how long, and what muscles you can't go percussion too heavy on small muscles, right?
Right.
Because I see a lot of that. I've done it myself too, but I see a lot of that. People, I'm going to use the gun, an easiest way to do it, but you cannot use that on a neck muscle.
So it's also proximity to like bone, right? So you're targeting bigger muscles,
so
and that tends to be more the issue, right? So like your pec, your glutes, like your quad, like you guys lat is probably like a big one. So those are all like very appropriate areas to kind of use them. Your calf are also like a very appropriate use of that. Smaller muscles, like it's probably not the best.
Yeah.
There's other ways to kind of get to them, but kind of using that percussive device, like a massage gun that Yeah.
So the
would be
percussion
like-
got to be careful on the small, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
what I've.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be as long as you think it does. Even if you're just doing a couple minutes, it's gonna be like helpful.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like, don't let that be the barrier for the stretching, for the percussive kind of stuff. Is like, oh, I don't have 10, 15 minutes. Like, it's fine if you just do 5. It's fine if you just. It's like a little's better than nothing by a good bit.
Those things are brutal. Man.
They are.
Where do you hit yourself? Dan?
I don't use them. I've just tried them. Like, we have one at my house. My wife would use it. I try. I'm like, man, that thing just pounds away.
I can't get off the 1.
Yeah.
I go to 1. That's it.
Oh yeah.
My wife is she's up to 3.
Yeah.
I'm like, that hurts.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Again, what muscles?
I'm a
you
one
use?
guy too.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
On my calf.
Yeah.
I use it on my calf.
Now, a pre and a post-match routine, there's different stretches there, right? Because on the pre-match, you want to be a little bit more dynamic on the stretching. You want to get your muscles going, and right, and everything else, get the blood flow. You don't want to extend the muscles. You don't have to have too much of a stationary stretching and go past what your range of motion is before a match.
Yeah, and these thoughts have changed. I'm sure you guys were involved in sports, and there was like either team warm-ups or this kind of thing, and there was like almost a camaraderie to sitting in a circle and doing these kind of stretches.
You got to be careful with those.
Yeah, so then they like studied that, and they found that, you know, just doing static stretching before wasn't super helpful, and it may have been a negative thing, right? So doing those dynamic stretches before, and then your static stretching after. Is helpful. And again, doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing, because people look at that as a barrier. I would too. I'm sure you guys are busy. You have kids. You have, you know, jobs, life. Like, it doesn't have to be drawn out, and you can just target the ones that you need the most, right? So, sounds like your calves and like your elbow kind of stuff, which could also be a little bit shoulder, and then you have hip stuff, you know. So making it geared towards your problem is helpful, because then you decrease the amount of time that you have to deal with this stuff.
It's again, everybody has their own routine, but over time I came up with this for myself, a routine that worked, and it's on a short day could be 6 minutes, on a long day could be 12.
Yeah.
But it's 12, 13 stretches from head to toe, and it's amazing how that opens up the entire. Doesn't need to be anything crazy. Doesn't mean you testing them out a little bit now, and it's good. But everybody find their own routine. You gotta find the time. I was the guy that didn't need to, didn't have to, till I walk funny, and then you're like, okay, I gotta
you don't
get this
think
going.
you need the time till you need the time.
Exactly,
because it's like
gotta prioritize,
nobody wants
man.
to do the preventive stuff. They're like, oh, now it hurts. Now I'm gonna do the stuff, and we battle that too. And I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, so it, you know,
I mean, mine wasn't even, you know, you had an injury. Since I've started doing the stretching, like there wasn't even a major injury there, but I've did, like, when I get out of bed in the morning, I'm way more fluid. I was starting to be like, I was walking like my father when I got out of bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's 70 something.
You're like, why am I like that?
Well, I'm just like, I'm getting a little bit older and this and that, but it is amazing that after not, in the grand scheme, not doing it that long, that, like, it does work. Like, I think sometimes that's what you're like, oh, is this ever really going to make a difference? But a little commitment to doing it, and your body is just so much more fluid.
You have to start to see that result, and like when you kind of do it, like you were talking
helps.
about the cold, you're like, I don't want to do this, and then you do it, and you're like, I feel so alert, or I you know, I'm seeing the benefit, and then you're like, once you start to see the benefit, then you're like, all right, I'll do this. I bought in. Yeah,
that's the same with teaching someone a skill in tennis. It's like sometimes there's that, maybe they've taken some lessons that haven't worked, but once all of a sudden you get a little results, you're like, you fully buy in, and then you're even more committed. You're like, all right, well, this is actually making a difference.
Yeah, I think an important thought there for people, and then, you know, people do what they want, but you're so busy in today's life. It's so much going on. You have family, work, kids, whatever it is, but I think your first priority should be your system. If the machine is not working well, nothing else is going to be your compromise. So that should be your number one priority. We start the day, find 10 minutes, 5, 15, 5, 20, get your machine ready, and then you're going to perform better. Whatever you need for that machine to work, but not doing stuff and putting that on the back burner, like, oh, not today, or I'm going to do the end of the day, and then you get tired, rightfully so, and then
something else comes up and you skip 1 day, 2
it
days,
can
3
feel
days.
selfish. It's almost like my time has to be spent elsewhere, but all of your time, if it's for your kids, is actually going to be better if you're feeling a little bit better. So you do have to do it, but
put your life vest on first.
Yeah.
Because you're
There
going
go.
to be, better, and you can take care of other people if you're in your best shape. And everybody knows when they've had, a bad day, or their significant other says like, hey, like you need to go to the gym, or you need to get, because you're just like, you need that to clear your head and be in a good headspace to take care of everybody else.
Yeah, 100%.
One thing that I'm going to age myself right here. I'm not going to say my age, but
your gray hair.
All you guys are.
You're not fooling about it, Larry.
All you are definitely younger than
It just means you're more wise.
Wise.
I do like you for it. But an older gentleman that I play tennis with a lot, his one advice, and Mike took it to heart, and a couple other guys said, going into your 50s, so like when you're about 40, make sure you are in shape getting into that age, because once you hit that 50 mark, trying to catch up is really, really hard. Do you see that with the older demographic? They're like, oh man, I wish I did that when I was younger. Like Rara said, he was a guy that wasn't a stretch guy, and now he realized that. So teaching the younger kids, or the younger adults, do it now and get into a routine, so then it's not foreign when it's too late.
Yeah. I fully agree. If somebody you haven't like read into or gotten into, there's a guy named Peter Attia.
Peter's,
fantastic. But the idea is like not just lifespan, but health span, and how do I build a reserve now, so that like what is my last generation or my last decade of life look like? I want to be able to play with my grandkids. I want to be able to be active. I want to be mentally, capable. And how you do those things isn't starting when you're in your 80s or when you're 90s. It's the actions that we're all taking now, and how much that impacts you later on. So
that's
totally
massive.
agree.
Attia's somebody that people should follow. Should look into. Sinclair's another big one, and obviously Huberman that people
Andrew
know.
Huberman.
Yeah, is
fantastic.
So it's such a good. So those are all. But it takes a little bit of effort, but you do have to. Do have to do it. Back a little bit.
It does become routine, though. It's just
it's
a matter of it takes some effort at first. You have a little discipline to get it done, but once you start feeling better from it, it becomes routine, and you almost don't want to miss it, because you're like, this is the reason I'm feeling so good is I'm doing all this stuff, So it's just like you have to have that breakthrough to do.
I think that
stuff
it's
long
perfect
enough,
time. It's like a habit versus like a New Year's kind of resolution versus, and then also taking a look at this as like do one thing at a time, right? So you're like, we talked about stretching, and then you're like, but I want to get better at my sleep, and then I want to do this, and then like what can I like honestly kind of.
Well, this is the month for it, right? This is January. Everybody, I'm doing everything at once.
So our practice is within a gym. So we see like an influx of people, and then February 1st is like back to normal.
Because it's too much. It's too much. You're right. You just pick one, fix that one, pick the second one. You're right. What would you? Let's go a little bit on sticking with the hand injuries a little bit, wrist injuries. Right, because that's common for tennis players, and that ties in, I'm sure, with the elbow and everything else.
Yep.
But do you have anything to add on what could because the way you hold a racket and everything else that we do in tennis could stretch and could hurt somebody's wrist, and you feel that. Obviously, the tension which you hold the grip is big. But what do you see on your end? What people can do again to mitigate that, other than rest and
build stability, build a more capable hand and wrist, right? So it's making sure they have adequate range of motion. So like you guys have to like be able to kind of flick your wrist both this way, and then like that supination kind of pronation movement, which is like turning your hand for people listening versus kind of going kind of pinky side or thumb side. So you need to have the adequate motion, and then you need to be able then you need to be able to control that, right? So you want to like load those tissues, and those are like small tissues.
That's
but
what
like
I'm saying,
so like banded stuff is good for kind of coming up and out and
down.
And then that hammer is great to kind of go kind of slow. For people that have access to it, I really like a kettlebell flip, which is like being able to hold a kettlebell and then kind of control so like the head of the kettlebell is kind of on your thumb side, and then being able to kind of control. So like building a more resilient hand and wrist would be like the first thing that I would kind of say, without like watching them play. And that's watching them play is more where you guys kind of come in, hey, you're doing this weird thing that we need to clean that up because it's causing this problem.
Especially over time and over use and so forth. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so it's taking a look at their actual problem, but then like build some resiliency in their wrist and forearm, and then build a bigger grip, right? So things like carries, so like farmers carries and things like that. So like like
okay, that's helpful.
Heavier, like
that's.
I don't know if you guys have access to like a trap bar, like doing a deadlift and walking with it.
Yeah.
That's for your grip strength, which plays into tennis, but it also plays into grip strength and longevity. So like they look at how resilient like older adults is. And I didn't mean to look at you.
Yeah.
See, I look his way too. Don't worry about it.
But how resilient you are, they look at your grip strength being an indicator of your overall health. So doing things like farmers carries, more so than anything else, and even balance, leg strength, anything else. The biggest thing that's tied to how all-cause mortality, will you die soon, is your grip strength.
Think about it. Yeah. For people, it's like we talked, you tell your body that's it, we're done doing any physical stuff. And
that's interesting.
Going the lower body here.
How's your grip strength, lad?
It's a loaded topic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's got a brace. They can't really squeeze hard. We see a lot, obviously, and this ties maybe a little bit more with prevention too, but lower body, right? With going back to a little bit the lifestyle these days that people are living, and you stay in a car longer, stay at a desk longer, you have your hamstring shorten a little bit, so you see that being a big cause of one, calf or Achilles, right? You see that being a cause of your lower back. Is on those injuries, like, what's the first thing that you tell somebody that's to prevent it and stay ahead of it? And if they do have them, let's get into that a little bit too.
Yeah. So if we're talking specifically like hamstring length, kind of strength, the best thing would be like an RDL, which is like a Romanian deadlift, because you want to both strengthen and stretch that tissue under load. So it's taking a look on like doing like a weighted stretch, but like kind of cleaning up the form. I wouldn't do that without watching them first. But that would probably be the most helpful in like improving the hamstring strength and length.
Yeah.
An underutilized thing to kind of take a look at is their landing mechanics. Like, are they able to kind of land softly?
That's very interesting.
Because your ability to dissipate force is huge, because then that kind of goes up the chain, and that could be an Achilles problem, a knee problem, a back problem, a hip problem. So how do they land when they're landing on one leg?
That's very,
So for you guys serving and you guys doing other things, like what's happening when that leg hits the ground? Is their knee kind of caving in?
Yeah.
Does their arch immediately collapse? Does it just look clean? Like you guys have eyes to kind of take a look at that. Does that look right? And you guys will know immediately. Does that look like it should look, or is that
correct?
Kind of.
That's I didn't think. Yeah, obviously stretching and all those things. It's big there, but. And that ties in, I'm sure, with knee injuries too.
Knee injuries. Right? So it's looking at the leg, not just being the knee, or not just being the ankle, or not just being the hip. Is like, how do we look at this like on a bigger system of what's happening when they're moving?
Because knees are massive. Obviously, I'm sure you come in for knee rehab. People coming in to use it.
So ankle sprains, when I was looking at, are common. Achilles tendinopathy. I've had a few people from Bass River with Achilles kind of stuff. Another thing is like loading that area. Your Achilles comes from like your big calf muscles, but really more importantly is a small calf muscle called your soleus. So doing things like seated calf raises would be like really helpful. Just to build that
So
because
literally
chair.
just
Sitting.
sitting,
and like load it heavy, and if they can handle it, do it with a wall sit, because they look at like building up strong quads and then building up an underutilized area is that soleus muscle that I was kind of talking about in the lower part of your calf, and that builds the tensile strength of your Achilles tendon, so you can handle more stuff.
What I found lately, and you can chime in because you're the expert here, like the tibial dorsiflexion there to get the tibial muscles going. That's an overlooked muscle that people don't even know they have.
Yep. And that's a decelerator. So if you work on landing mechanics, what slows you down, the hip muscles, and then those pretibial muscles that you're talking about, and that's hugely undertrained area. Right? So it'd be like those working on strengthening the muscles that
I didn't even realize I had it either. I'm like, that's my front calf.
Yeah,
that's my front calf.
But a lot of people that's first start off playing tennis or running or something that get shin splints or get something like this. So it's like building a resilient system before you can do that, and that being weak also impacts your knees. So trying to get those shin muscles going, the soleus muscle going. Knee injuries were common, so we talked about landing mechanics. So your knee's not kind of caving, and what prevents that from caving in is like good strong hip muscles. And it'll be rare that people are like, I'm coming in. Sometimes they'll come in for their hip, but oftentimes they'll come in, my knee hurts or my back on that side hurts, and the outside of their hip is pretty weak.
Yeah, you must see
those muscles we're just talking about there. Are they tied into what's that other super common one?
Plantar
fasciitis.
Yes. Super common. So that your ability to handle that deceleration is huge, because if your muscles can't control that, the tendons and the other things are going to have to control that. So plantar fasciitis or Achilles tendinopathy or patellar tendinopathy, the tendon in the front part of your knee there. But your ability to control landing is huge.
Yeah. Last one on the injuries or maybe overlooked muscles that was are the hip flexors.
Yes.
Right? It's just people associate that maybe with a groin pain, but sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's both hip flexor length and then strength, especially in like a shortened position. So oftentimes people assume that their hip flexors are really tight, and they can be tight, but they can be tight and weak, because that's another area that is not really trained for like strength kind of stuff. People like work their quads or work their biceps, those things. They don't think about training their hip flexors.
You work the muscles that you can show.
Flexors really ripped. Guys got ripped hip flexors.
Right. You don't see them, right? So you don't kind of train them. So doing challenging your hip above 90 degrees of hip flexion. So your leg has to be high for you to kind of work that area.
That's key, right?
Yeah.
And what does that mean, though? What do you mean there?
It's the stretches that we do when we sit and you
stretch,
and you would put
kind
your
of lean in,
put your leg on
but
a
so
chair.
you put it up,
or you get your butt down.
So that would be a stretch, but then the strengthening thing would be like making that muscle work, but above 90 degrees. So like do you guys have stairs at home?
Yeah.
Assuming, yeah. So like having one foot on the second stair, so it's already lifted up, and then seeing if you can lift that top leg up over 90 degrees and hold it there. So it's the balance of the down leg, but it's the stability and strength of your hip flexor on the top.
Don't bring up stairs with Kevin.
I know. He has a history of falling. We're not going to get into it now.
Not anymore.
Well, balance is really important too. Balance is important in tennis as well. So like taking a look at somebody on one leg is probably an important one to kind of take a look at.
Couple of things to kind of on specific for us for tennis pros, right? And we obviously use our muscles for a lot every day too. And just one side, any maintenance tips for us other than what we just talked about?
Yeah, go on the other direction, and then maintaining your ability, using the other side, which sounds like you're already doing, and then making sure that you maintain movement variability. So oftentimes there's asymmetries that we see in tennis. There's usually a loss of like rotation in your shoulder, because like if you get more overhead, you tend to get more external rotation, which is like your ability to kind of come up like this, and usually you lose this way. Oftentimes you lose full flexion. Usually you can kind of side bend more one way than the other. Yeah. So it's making sure that you can side bend to the other direction. So like an overhead kind of reach
Yeah.
One way for you guys is going to feel fantastic. I can do this for days. And the other way is going to kind of suck.
Yeah.
So
Tied, right?
working on going the opposite direction at your trunk. And then we alluded to the hip rotation.
Yeah.
So for ours, it was like one hip could kind of move better than the other. And that's going to be really common for you guys.
Yeah.
So getting into what we call like a 90-90 position. So putting one in kind of sitting, putting one leg in front of you bent at 90 degrees and one leg behind you kind of bent at 90 degrees. Same thing. You're going to go one way and you could drink your coffee. You could talk to people, go the other way and you'd be like, I'm tearing up. Like I can't be
You can't
here.
even stay straight. Yeah.
This is terrible. So like maintaining that movement variability in the other direction. So like tennis is asymmetrical by nature and it needs to be for the sport, but you need to maintain the movement variability to go the other way for life, for staying healthy and stuff.
And for anybody that's playing, obviously the same thing. And then what would you, we talked about it, we covered it, but just to kind of put under one title there, balancing the strength and the flexibility in tennis. Like what will be a couple of tips for that? Like you don't want to go one way or the other. You want to keep both, correct?
Yeah. So working through a full range of motion with good strength training is going to be great because then you're loading the area like under weight. So you're getting stronger at the same time that you're getting mobile. So the one that we used earlier would be like a Romanian deadlift, being able to kind of lift a weight, but kind of stretch out your hamstrings at the same time. An upper body example to maintain like shoulder flexibility and like mid-back flexibility was being able to do like a lat pull down or like a pull up, but being able to kind of do a dead hang because for you guys, because if you guys will be asymmetrical there because like one side's used to going way up and the other side is not. So you kind of have some asymmetry. So like this is not uncommon for tennis players to be like able to like lift one shoulder and not the other. Yeah. So being like from a strength and conditioning kind of standpoint is making sure that you kind of train under load through a full range of motion is probably the best way to do both at the same time. And then there's common areas that you guys are going to have tight. It's like your upper back, so your hips, like your ankles. Like there's going to be things that you kind of want to kind of train. Same thing through a full range of motion. So if it's more of a problem with your ankles being stiff, it'd be like a calf raise, but through the full range of motion.
Getting all the way down. Those are important because we use those ankles. We don't think about ankle flexibility so much, but you need it.
Yeah.
To stop, to land, to turn, like it's so much of it. And it's not easy because you don't realize it. That's and obviously the same thing with the juniors building up their strength as they learn.
So you guys work with guys and girls. So when I was out there was two different sides, right? So when you watch some of these younger girls or older women hit, they're like floppy, like they're not. So sometimes you want to create some stiffness. If they're getting that elbow pain, it's like too much movement. So it's like working on that proximal stability because their stability through their wrist and their stability through their shoulder complex. Because when they go to hit, there's like too much like kind of a reverberation or like too much movement. You guys will see that be like, wow.
Yeah.
So those people need to get stiff, and then they need stiffness, and then you have like an older guy.
Yeah.
Super tight, so like he needs more of the mobility kind of stuff. So it's hard to kind of,
you do see that.
Yeah.
Andy, this has been so helpful, man. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Other than Soul PT, like, do you have a website that people can go?
So it's soulpt.com.
Yeah.
We have like social media stuff, which is also just Soul PT on kind of like Facebook or Instagram or things like that. I'm also on there too, but then you'll also get like pictures of my kids and stuff.
You go.
But if you follow Soul PT, you'll get more like tips and stuff like that.
That's awesome, and I'm sure they're gonna contact you if they have injuries. Hopefully not too many, but we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. We'll be on time next time. Okay, so
I won't be half an hour early, so that's good.
Thank you.